to Center Point Church. I am so glad to be here with you guys today. If you're joining us online, welcome. And if you're new here, we're glad that you're here. So, taking a deep breath. It's a Mother's Day weekend. I want you guys to know we're going to celebrate you in a bit. But first off, I want you to share that our mission at Center Point is to inspire people to follow Jesus, because we really do believe that Jesus will change your guy's life. And maybe when I said that, that stirred up some questions in you. Maybe you'd like to know more about Center Point, or maybe you've been here for a while and you want to take a next step with us. And I want you guys to know that there is a New Here booth in the foyer, and our guest services team, they're out there and they'd love to connect with you. I believe we have a gift for you as well. But yeah, head out there because we'd love to get to know you and help you take a next step. If you're online, you can check the chat box. I think there will be a link in there as well. So today is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Oh, us moms, we get it. So we're going to celebrate you because moms, you do a lot of work. But I also here at Center Point want to let you guys know that it can be different. Mother's Day can mean different things for different people. There's different stories, different journeys. So we want to celebrate you as well. We call it Women of Influence. So if you're somebody that's influencing the next generation, if you're an aunt, if you're a mom, a grandma, a friend, a neighbor, we want you to know that we love you guys. We're celebrating you too. So happy Mother's Day to all of you women having impact. You guys matter. Now, I'm up on the stage. I'm a mom. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I'm just going to be real. Once in a while, I scroll through Facebook and Instagram. I look on the internet. I try to figure out, how am I going to be a parent? Is this normal? Is this not normal? So since I'm up here, I thought I'd pick it forward, share with you guys a couple of tips. I'm gonna get my phone in here, a couple of tips and things that I've read that's kind of normalized my parenting journey. You guys okay with that? Okay, so here we go. Having toddlers is cool because you never know how you're going to be woken up. Gentle kiss on the cheek, cannonball to the stomach, getting your face licked, that's real. Great, sweet, good morning, mama. Headbutt angry dinosaur style? Has that happened to any of you guys? Just me? Oh, someone's out there. Okay, the possibilities are endless and usually painful. Some mornings, that's my mornings, guys. Okay, how about this one? If you don't know where your kids are in the house, turn off the Wi-Fi and watch them slowly appear. Oh, you guys know that one. That's a good tip for today for you guys. Okay, parenting is a delicate balance of convincing your child they can do anything in life while simultaneously screaming, "Don't do that," every 3 minutes. Yes, that's my journey. And I threw this one in here, you know, last but not least, and I know my husband's not here, but I'm just gonna say this, and this is humbling. Parenting is humbling. Mom life is humbling. So I read this. I never realized how annoying I could be until I created a miniature version of myself and started arguing with it daily. Yes. If you know, you know. Am I right? Oh, but in all seriousness, we know you guys, what you guys do is hard. We know that it can take a lot of work, but it matters and it's important and we love you. So wherever you are, you're a mom, you're women of influence, we love you, we appreciate you. I want you to check this video out.
For the moms who raised us up, gave us love, and made us strong. For the praying moms who don't always know what to do, but always know who to talk to. For the hurting moms who've loved and lost, but never given up. For those who never got called mom, but who cared for us all like a mom would. For the young moms who became moms sooner than expected and gave it all they had. For the single moms who tirelessly and courageously learned how to do this on their own. For the stepmoms and the stand-in moms who rose to the occasion and loved us well. For the working moms, the stay-home moms, the cooking moms, and the takeout moms, thank you for teaching us how to walk, how to learn, and how to make a difference. For taking care of us when you barely had enough time to take care of yourself. For comforting us when we felt alone and afraid. For lifting us up when others put us down. For the rides, the meals, the laundry and the birthday parties, for the years, tears, laughter, and love. It's not enough, but we want to say thank you. Thank you for doing for us what we could never do for ourselves. We love you. We honor you. We remember you today. Happy Mother's Day.
Pretty awesome, hey? So happy Mother's Day. You can see me. We have some treats outside in the foyer after for you guys to grab. So hang out there, chat, high five another woman, say, you're doing a great job. Keep going. Okay. So as for today, we are in part 2 of our series, Follow. So before Josh comes up, we're going to sing a few songs. If they're unfamiliar to you, that's okay. We're going to put the lyrics up behind us, and you can follow along. So we're going to get started. So why don't you stand up? I want you to look at someone next to you and say, I'm glad you're here. Let's go.
Sing it out. There were walls. There were walls between us. By your cross you came and broke them down. And broke them down. There were chains around us. By your grace we are no longer bound. No longer bound. You called me out of the grave. You called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. It awakens me. Feel the darkness shaking, all the dead are coming back to life, back to life. Hear the song awaken, all creation singing, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. You called me out of the grave, called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is great. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shout it out. We're alive, 'cause you're alive. What a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shout it out. We're alive, 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shout it out. We're alive, 'cause you're alive. Your love. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens. Come on, let's build it. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater.
to the wind, and I'll trace your voice through the dark, fix my eyes on the unexpected, in the wonder of your shadow stare. Or did it trace at all you are? But when I think about the roads you took for love, I know your grace will stay the path. Light up the way of your heart. Move me like you do the mountains. Move me like you do the wind. And I'll trace your voice through the dark. Fix my eyes on the unexpected. The wonder of your shadow stare. And I won't be afraid. In every way, you never fail. So have your way. Here you got it. And I'll sing your praise. Fix my heart to yours. Ready for the unexpected. Ready for what you will do next. So take another step.
Well, I don't know about you, but I need moments like that in my life. Can we just thank the team for leading us this morning? Thanks, John, Megan, Ken. I feel like whenever I start doing names on the platform, I have to go through the whole list. Matt, Steve, still here. You know, these guys, they come early and they serve, and I'm just so thankful for their passion, one, for Jesus, and then second, just that they would just serve and lean in. And there's so many amazing people that make this happen. And it's easy on stages and on platforms to look performancy. You can put it together and you can be polished. But I just got to say, just behind the stages and behind the scenes, there's such incredible people. And so thank you so much, team. I know you're gone now, so I'm just talking to the air. But yeah, can we put it up for them one more time? Just thank you so much, music team. And we are continuing our series called Follow, and in part 2. And so I just want to recap a few points maybe you had missed last week, or maybe you missed it online. And if you want to go back, you can rewatch it, or you can go back on our website. But I just want to recap a few points that I made last week that might be startling observations for you, wherever you find yourself in your faith journey. But here's some of the things that we recapped last week. Here's the first one. What we choose to follow reveals what we believe to be most important. So the thing that we put our life into, the thing that we pursue, whether unintentionally or intentionally, it reveals to us what we believe to be most important. So what you're following, what you're pursuing, and we had a whole list last week, and you go back and look at that, but we had a whole list of things that we could possibly pursue. What you choose to pursue or what you choose to follow, okay, reveals what you believe to be most important. But then we talked about Jesus' invitation, and this is what we said about Jesus' invitation last week. That Jesus' invitation was and is an invitation not to religion, but to relationship. It's not about ticking off boxes. It's not just making sure that our behavior lines up or that we believe correctly, but that Jesus ultimately came to restore a relationship that was broken between us and the Father. And so it's an invitation, not just to tick off a to-do list, but to be in relationship with Jesus. Because here's what religion says. Religion says this. Religion says change and you can join us. I mean, make sure you get your Sunday best, right? Make sure at least you don't say too many words coming to church in the morning, right? So you can at least feel the guilt a little less coming through the doors. Like, this is what religion tells us. But Jesus is a different and a unique way. Jesus says this, join us and you will change. And so this series is about us following, not just believing and behaving correctly. Although some of those behaviors and those beliefs are good, without action, things don't quite work the way they were meant to work. And so we're going to look at a story, two stories actually, that are the same story in two different books of the Bible about brothers in boats. Now, what I find fascinating about the followers of Jesus in the first century is that they're quite the motley crew. Now, that name has been taken from an average band. For those online, that's permanent. I'm okay with that. But anyways, so some of you are like, and that's why I'm not coming back. And okay. But you know what? It's this motley crew of people. There's those who are religious leaders and those who are irreligious. Those who are on the fringes of society and those who are in the leaders of society. Rich, poor, old, young, all have been called. And in the first century, in Jesus' lifetime as he's here on earth, all this motley crew of people follow him. And they're quite the posse. But there's, at the beginning of the journey, a conversation that Jesus has with some of what are going to be his closest followers or his disciples. And it's that conversation I want to look at. And in particular, for some of you, what might seem like an invitation to follow Jesus is going to feel like the first story that we unpack today. It's going to feel like such a big stretch because when you read the story or you see it in one of the books, there's not a lot of details and it just seems like there's a huge leap. And for some of you, it's in that huge leap that you're like, I'm not so sure. And so we're going to look at two different stories. The first one seems almost impossible, but the second adds some detail to help us understand the stages of what it looks like to follow Jesus. So let's look in a book of Matthew. We're going to go into chapter 4. This is where we're going to start. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, his name changes after he meets Jesus. And Jesus is like Simon, which means reed. Okay, kind of like one that blows in the wind. And Peter is the rock. And so Jesus renames Peter from this one that just kind of goes in all sorts of different directions and all sorts of craziness to, I'm going to bring some stability. And you're going to be, and Peter doesn't know this at the time, but you're going to be the one in which I build my church upon. It's a big call for Peter. But he's sitting in the boat at this point. There's two brothers, Simon Peter and his brother Andrew. And they were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And because they were fishermen, it meant that as young Jewish boys, that they wouldn't have made it in the educational system. At some point, they had chosen to fish. Maybe it was wealth, or maybe it was their intelligence, or whatever. But they were least likely characters to follow what Jesus would be called a rabbi or a teacher. But he ends up talking to these two. Let's go to the next verse. And this is what happens next. Come follow me, Jesus says, and I will send you out to fish for people. Okay? At once they left their nets and they followed him. Boom, done. But the story continues. Next one. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, sweet name, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, another great, isn't that such a sweet name? But preparing their nets, Jesus called them. Look what happens next. And immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. I mean, we're going into a bit of an interesting time here economically. Imagine a small business owner losing two of his employees. Not just employees, but his sons. This seems almost irresponsible. Jesus, how could you invite these two to follow you? This seems like you're leaving Zebedee on his own. It's unexpected. It seems irresponsible. And it seems like such a big step of faith that for many of us, when we hear the immediacy of them following Jesus, we're like, that's not quite my story. It's as if it's like an all-in, do or die. We've heard it taught in the church, Lord of all or Lord not at all. And it's like this big cutting line. And the question is, who has that much faith? Because it doesn't seem from the outside like faith. It almost feels like foolishness. How could you just leave everything? How could you just vocationally make a change? How could there just be this massive step? And I think after we read this story one more time in a different book and we see some more detail, it begins to make more sense to us. Because the good news is that following Jesus doesn't always look this way. And as we add details to the story, it definitely doesn't look that way. It works in the book of Matthew for what Matthew is trying to accomplish in his writing. But in the book of Luke that we're going to look at, he adds detail. And here is so important. As maybe you're a new Bible reader, or maybe you've been reading the Bible for some time, or maybe you're new to it and you're just trying to figure out, how do I even have an entry point? It's very important for us not to just pull one section and make that the very thing that becomes everything we stake our life upon. It's all. We have to look at all the different books and all the things that are presented to us, especially pertaining to these first four books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Because as the details are filled in, it changes the way in which our spiritual journey unfolds. And for many people, they hear all in or nothing, and it's like, that's a tough step. But that's not the only step that's presented. Let's look at the book of Luke. I feel some of your tension. One day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of, I even practiced this word, Gennesaret. Okay. The people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. Already more detail, right? They're sitting and they're listening. Let's go to the next verse. He saw at the water's edge two boats, left there by fishermen who were washing their nets. I mean, they're pulling out all the stuff out of their boats. They're untangling the nets. They've been fishing at night, so who knows what they were eating and what ended up on the floor of the boat. I mean, they're just getting everything cleaned up. And so he's seeing them wash their nets. And then let's go to verse 3. He got into one of the boats, and then one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. And then he sat down and he taught the people from the boat. A little bit more detail, we'll continue. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, and based on the book of Matthew, what you believe should happen next, right, is that Jesus said something very convincing. And so it was at that point that they were like, immediately after this, they chose to follow. That makes sense. I mean, maybe he articulated it really clearly. Maybe there was something that happened. Maybe he was talking to the people. I mean, Simon's sitting beside him in the boat, and he's hearing everything Jesus had to say. So surely he said something convincing. But look what happens next. He said to Simon, put out into the deep water. Oh, so there's another step. Yeah, he said, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Same story, more detail, right? Let's go to the next one. And Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets. I'm going to paraphrase this for just a minute. We don't really know Peter's tone, and so maybe I'm being a bit assumptive with this. But he's like, you're a son of a carpenter. I'm a fisherman. You teach people, Pastor. I fish. Why are you telling me to throw the nets down? And not just that, but have you ever done something in front of a crowd that could be fairly embarrassing? Have you ever had that moment where you're like, oh, this might not go well? This is the moment. There's a crowd that's listened to Jesus, and now Jesus is asking them to fish. And Peter's like, this is unusual. This is unexpected. This doesn't seem like the way it should be. And yet, he says this, but because, trickery. But because you say so, I will let down the nets. Look what happens next. And when they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. Let's go to the next one. So they signaled their partners in the other boat, and we know from the story that it's James and John, to come and help them. And they came and they filled both boats so full that they began to sink. I mean, this is good news, especially when they didn't catch anything the night before. Let's go to the next one. And when Simon Peter saw this, and I had this set up a little bit differently, but just don't look at this next section, okay? And what we might assume here, but you can see it on the screen so you can't. But what you might have assumed here is that it's at this point where he goes, truly, this is God's son. Truly, this is Jesus, and I'm choosing to follow. It's at this point where you go, whoa, the immediately is about to kick in here, right? That's not what Peter does, right? Look what he says. He fell at Jesus' knees. In other words, he fell to his own knees. And what does he say? Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man. I'm a sinful man. Probably doubted in the fact that I could catch these fish. I probably doubted in your plan, which seemed a little bit more unusual than what I would have done. I'm a sinful man. For all of you in the room today, especially those of you that are figuring out what is this Jesus way, how does it work? I just want you to know that sin is not a disqualifier, it's a prerequisite. Period. To follow Jesus assumes that we need something. It assumes that we need help, and it assumes that we don't have it all together. As a matter of fact, those in the New Testament that we see through Jesus' story that thought they had it all together and didn't need Jesus chose not to follow him. It's those that know that there's something in our lives that's not quite right. And maybe we've known it for a little while, or maybe we've known it for a lifetime, or maybe something has even happened to us and we wonder, am I ever going to be accepted? Or am I ever going to be forgiven? Or can I ever move on? Or can I ever be loved? Peter recognizes his need, and look what Jesus says next. He says this, for where he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of the fish they had taken. Oh my gosh. And so James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partner, then, oh my gosh. Here we go. Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. I want you to hear these words. Don't be afraid. I'm not here to unearth something. I'm not here to shame you. I'm not here to leave you in those feelings. Don't be afraid. But I am going to call you to something else. Let's go to the next one. So they pulled their boats up on the shore. And here is where we see the verse in Matthew. They left everything and they followed him. Doesn't the story change with a little bit more detail, though? There's 4 kind of stages that we see here as people choose to follow Jesus. And these are the stages that I think are important for us. And as I've led for many years in the church, I have seen this happen over and over and over again. That there have been moments where people immediately chose to follow. I'm not going to say that there aren't. But by and large, there has been a lot that I've seen come in these 4 stages that we see in the book of Luke. And here are the 4 stages based on this story. Let's look at the first one. It's to sit and listen. You see, Jesus invites people to listen and to sit. We see this at the very beginning of the story, that he's sitting there and he's teaching those that are on the shore. And then he ends up going out in the boat and then he teaches those who are on the shore. And for many people, this is where their faith journey starts. They're maybe exploring online. No jokes, most times it starts with YouTube, right? Which can be a whole different mix of things. But starts on YouTube or reading a book that your friend gave you, or maybe even accepting an invite to church and you're sitting here and you're listening. But there's a moment in our faith journey where we can take that step. And for many people, the beginning stages of following Jesus is sitting and listening, examining the evidence. And the only commitment here that Jesus is asking for is just sit and to listen. He's just teaching the people. He's not scolding them for sitting and listening. It's part of the journey. And so people are sitting and they're listening. And that might be where you're sitting today. But your first step is you've come, you're sitting and you're listening. Maybe you tracked a church online, or maybe you talked to a friend. But you've sat and you've listened and you're examining and you're reasoning. That's what we see here in the story, is the first stage is just sitting and listening. This is what we see next, though, is to loan him the boat. This is a little bit more commitment. It's a small inconvenience, let's say. It might be the small inconvenience of starting point, where you begin to go in a starting point class and you begin to class or group and you begin to hear stories of other people in their faith journeys, as well as get to hear what it means to follow Jesus and what that looks like. It might be you beginning to pray. It might be beginning for you to read the New Testament, or to get involved in a serve team, to just loan the boat. A small inconvenience, just leaning in a little bit more. And we see this in the second stage, that he says, hey, Peter, can you bring out the boat for me? And then he goes out. He's teaching, he's sitting and listening, and then he brings the boat out. And then we see the next stage. And this is where it gets really exciting. Not that the other 2 aren't, but this is where the rubber starts hitting road. Take him fishing. And here in all of our stories, there's going to come a point where it doesn't make sense to you. There's a point where you go, man, I know I've been wanting to pursue a relationship for a long time, but God's asking me to maybe take 3 months. to do things a little bit different and slow things down and just focus on my relationship with God. Or maybe you've been at that job for a year and it's sucking your soul, and you're like, oh, I don't want to make a decision. I kind of committed to this, but you know it's not right, and it's moving on from that job. Or maybe it's something a little bit different where it's inconveniencing you a little bit more personally. Maybe it's committing to small group, not just for one semester, but for longer, to see a life change in a small group or a serve team. Maybe even financially, reorienting your finances, percentage giving. I don't know what it looks like for you, but there's some point on the faith journey that Jesus is going to ask us to do something that doesn't make sense in our minds. And although we've sat and we've listened and we've reasoned, although we've loaned him just a little bit more time in that small inconvenience to loan him the boat, there's a point where we have to put down our nets. And unless we do, and I'm going to talk to those who have been on the journey for a little while. If you're trying to figure this out and you're in like the sit and listen phase, or you're in the loan him the boat phase, it's okay. You can take a deep breath here. But for some of us, if I can be really direct, COVID has become an excuse to not go fishing. And it's not just you I'm talking to, it's me as well. There's things that have come up. Community has never been more challenging than right now. It was so good on Friday night. We had the music team over at our house, and we just sat, and we laughed. We ate good food, right? All my Nespresso pods are gone. I got to go back down to Metrotown. Come on, Nespresso, come to this side of the river. Okay. Some of you are like, oh, Nespresso, you're just such a wasteful person. I might be. But at some point, we need to take him fishing. At some point, we need to take the words of James, Jesus' half-brother, seriously. And I'm talking to Christians right now, or those that call yourselves followers of Jesus. Faith without works is dead. And our faith dies if we stop fishing. To follow Jesus means that we continue through the 4 stages, and here's the last one. And this is where the whole game changed. For me and for many of you, when you chose to follow Jesus and you left your nets. And this is the stage that's so exciting, but it's such a big risk because we open our hands to God and we say, with my whole life, I choose to give it to you. Have your way. And it didn't happen overnight for many of us. It began in this process that we sat and we listened. And then we said, you know what? You can inconvenience me a little bit more. I'm going to spend some more time there. And then you're like taking and fishing. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm dropping the nets down. And I'm doing maybe one thing that's inconvenient right now. But there's some point where we say, God, it's just not one thing that I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you my whole life. And I'm going to open up my whole hands. And I know the feeling. I know that feeling. As a matter of fact, around this time last year, it was that feeling. I want to share a story with you, and I don't know if we should just cut online right now or whatever we can do. Brett, you can maybe call online, and then we just do an in-the-room thing. Is that okay? About this time last year, we brought 2 churches together. Some of you know the story, but now we're center point. I don't mention it very often, but I mention it for this reason, is that it was a laying down of what God had originally called us to for something else, and I believed even something better, and so did many elders and leaders in the church. But it was a laying down. Everything. You can have everything in my life. But there's more to that story. About 8 years ago, I sat in that seat right there. I come from a church where I had said that I wanted to start a church, and nobody popped the popper. Nobody celebrated. It was like, you're leaving? And that hurts, and okay, we'll just not talk about it. And then we tried to figure out and find our legs. And I remember sitting in the room, and Destiny and I sat side by side, and we sat in a service like this. And at that time, if you had told me And I remember God asking me to lay down my life, and I did, and it was hard, to the point where we lost relationships and we lost a lot of different things. And I'm not trying to elevate myself. All I'm saying is this is the goodness of God that we sang about this morning. As I sat in that seat, and I said, God, whatever you have for me, if it's setting up and tearing down, I'm in. If it's like doing a small group for the rest of my life, I'm in. If it's going back in the business, but I think business community, I'm in. But if it's to do church and be a pastor, I'm going to plant a church and I'm in. And I remember surrendering in a service at Fraser Point Church. And now I'm on the stage, and it's kind of weird. And I didn't get here by my own volition. It was the grace and the goodness of God in the surrender of saying, do whatever with my life. And this isn't just a daily thing or a yearly thing or a century thing. This is a daily thing that we say, God, use my life. And God has been so good to Destiny and myself. God has been so good to leaders in this church that have laid it down and have sacrificed and have led. And I believe the best is ahead for us as a church. Not because we're really great people, but because we serve a great God who we follow. But it comes at laying down our nets. And I don't know what stage you are. I don't know what point you are in the journey. Maybe it's just sitting and listening. Maybe it's just taking some time to loan your boat, a small inconvenience. Maybe it's one thing that you need to let your net down on and say, well, that's a little unusual or unpredictable, but I'm going to do it. Or maybe you're at a point where you've been waffling a little bit and you know that you need to go all in, but you're hesitating. I don't know what step it is, but this is what I want to encourage you with today. Take it. You won't regret it. I don't look back and regret the things that God has done through my life. Has it been challenging and hard at times? Absolutely. I mean, Jesus tells us it's going to be hard and challenging. But it's better. Because Jesus makes us better. And Jesus also walks with us in the journey. So I don't know where you are today, but I want to encourage you to take your next step. Whatever step that is, whatever it looks like, just take it. And I know if it's that final one, the like laying it all down one, that it's hard, but it's good. Let's pray. God, today I thank you for this story of brothers in boats. God, that for some moments in our life you call us to an immediate response. And in other areas, God, there's these stages of you developing us in our faith. For those that are in the sit and listen stage, God, that you would encourage them. That they would know that you're their Heavenly Father and you care about them. For those who are in the next phase, God, of loaning the boat, maybe in starting point or starting in a small group, on a serve team or reorienting some things in their life, reading, praying for the first time, would you encourage them in this process? God, for those that need to just let down their nets, maybe that's taking the step of serving or of giving or being in a small group, God, that you would encourage them in that step too. That might seem unusual, might seem too risky, but God, we know that you've been faithful. We sang about it this morning. Thank you for your goodness. And for those who are in that final stage, that are just waiting to lay it down, but just don't know what's on the other side, God, I pray that they would be at peace as they make a decision to say, God, I give it to you. And wherever we are in our faith journeys, God, encourage us today. I thank you for the awesome mothers in the room. I thank you for those, God, that have led well when nobody sees, that put their kids to bed, that are trying to navigate the teenage years, that are wondering if they're making a difference, God, that you would encourage them right now. And they would know that there's a church that supports them and loves them. I pray for those who have lost their moms, for those that didn't have a mom, for those that desire to be a mom. In all those places of tension, I ask for your peace, and that they would know again that you're with them. God, thank you that you call us your children, sons and daughters. Help us understand that and lean into that today. Amen. Hey, it's so great that you've chosen to be with us today. I'm looking forward to, again, going into week 3 of Follow next week. So I want to encourage you to come back as we unpack that a little bit more. I hope you have a fantastic day. If you don't, come visit me just after service. I'll give you a big hug and I'll say, have a great day. And I'll try and help you with that. But you know what? There's so many amazing people, guest services people. If you are new here, again, go say hi to our guest services team. Have an amazing week. We'll see you next week at Center Point Church.